Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to the December 2012 special edition of HRtech's HRtechnology Happy Hour Web Mingle. I am Matt LaFata, president of HRtech and one of your hosts for today's Web Mingle. I'm also joined today by Tiffany Appleby, our vice president of marketing and strategic alliances, as well as Jacqueline Kuhn, our VP of HCM Consulting Services, and John Hinojos, our VP of Consultant Services. So our show's being broadcast live today from our offices here in Frisco, Texas, and several other places. So for our first-time listeners out there, let me tell you what this Web Mingle and HRtech is all about. First of all, HRtech is the leading HR systems consulting firm, and you can learn more about us at HRtech.com. That is HRCHITECT.com. This is our 105th Web Mingle since it made its debut about 4 years ago. So the Web Mingle is designed to give you some insight into the often puzzling world of HR technology, talk about events in our industry, provide insightful interviews with the people of our industry, and today's special broadcast is our 4th annual HR Technology Recap. So welcome to Tiffany, John, and Jacqueline, and thanks for being on today's show.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
All right, so also just want to take a moment since the end of the year to thank all of our past Web Mingle guests. It was a lot of wonderful thought-provoking and insightful discussions that took place throughout the year. And as we always do at this time of year, we'd like to talk about really a recap of some of the highlights of the HCM world or the HR technology world. And as many of you know, we publish a report on HR and integrated talent management technology trends. And it's been an interesting year, and we'll go through some of the things that have happened and then talk about some things to look for in 2013. But what I always think is a good way to start this show is to look back at the predictions that we made at the end of 2011. And besides the world ending tomorrow, according to the Mayans, we thought we would go through some of our own predictions and see whether they came true or not. So I'm going to just go through this list, and we'll have just a short discussion on each of them because we could discuss each of them in great detail, but we won't because we have a lot we want to get through today. So prediction number one that we made last year was that the overall human capital management software market will continue to consolidate, but at a slower pace, and certainly some consolidation took place, but not like the couple of years prior to this one where it was a frenzy. So I guess I'll turn to Jacqueline first, and A, did that prediction come true, and B, what kind of thoughts do you have about that, Jacqueline?
Yes, this prediction did come true. We did have one key surprising acquisition with Connexa being bought by IBM, and the ongoing, debate on what's happening with the Teleoracle, as I call the Teleoracle, acquisition. But that was, there may have been smaller things happening here or there, but that was really the big acquisition activity last year, and not surprising that it takes a lot of money to acquire some of these big players, and the market overall is cautious. So I think it came true in general.
Excellent. John, anything to add to that?
No, I would agree. I think it came true. I think we saw a very slow a movement at some consolidations or buyouts, and then we saw a lot of flurry all at once, and it looked like it was going to become a very active year, but then it slowed down again. So I think it will be interesting to continue to watch this throughout 2013 to see how some of these acquisitions actually unfold and what actually happens to the product lines.
Excellent. So 1 for 1. So prediction number 2 was HCM vendors with holistic solutions that drive business results will gain share versus technology-focused providers. So this time I'll start with John. Did that one come true?
Yes, that one came true also. We saw the people start looking at the HCM vendors that had a cradle to grave sort of solution rather than piecing together solutions that we've seen in the past. Even though it's easy to move data back and forth between systems anymore, I think where the big problem is, or the concern is coming up, is dealing with the multiple different vendors and multiple different contracts and everything. And people are trying to make their lives a little simpler as their staffs get leaner and leaner still.
Excellent. And Jacqueline, anything to add to that?
I do. We actually even have some data to back up our predictions in that the Cedar Creststone annual HCM survey also showed that companies that have holistic solutions for HCM did better business-wise than companies that did not have holistic solutions. So our prediction was even backed up by evidence.
Excellent. Evidence is always good, so we're on a roll, 2 for 2. So let's go to the next prediction, which was marketing and development efforts around HCM suites will continue, but shift focus to an increase in workforce management. So let's go back to Jacqueline this time. Did that happen?
I would say yes, it did happen. In especially the area where succession planning and talent pooling has been greatly developed in all of the HCM suites that we are seeing, and the focus on tying who is where and what is needed, skill sets, and having all of the vendors now really focus on those features of their suites, building them out, providing more capabilities, and tying them together.
And John, anything further on that one?
Yeah, the only thing I also see on this is that it seems to be, we're seeing it a lot with the global corporations or organizations, regardless of the size or the amount of people that they have within their company. In the past, they usually have left the rest of the world all operating independently, but now we're finding organizations wants to know what skill sets they have, how they can move people around into temporary assignments, and so I think we're going to continue to see this focus on workforce management, again, going into 2013.
Excellent. So this next prediction, I know we've made this same prediction for the last few years, and I believe it is still true, that niche and HCM suite vendors will maintain their feature and function lead, and even that line is becoming blurred between niche and HCM suite vendors, but has that prediction still held true?
Yeah,
John.
John. Yes, that one did hold true. We did see a continuing development, probably not as dramatic as I would have expected. I think the industry is, I'm not going to say in a malaise, but I think they are going a lot slower, but they are adding features and functionality. I think the interesting thing that we're seeing is that some of the vendors who may not have a specific functionality or well-built-out functionality are linking up with some of the niche players to offer their services. So if the client looks at what the vendor has initially and says this isn't going to make it, they'll go, oh, well, we've got a partnership with XYZ, and then they'll bring that person in. So I think the clients are looking, I think, more at features and functionality, and the vendors are trying to bring their products up to par.
Mm-hmm. And Jacqueline?
I would agree completely. I think we saw this past year, particularly the HCM suite, what Oracle has done with Fusion, and really coming out and surprising most folks at how full their feature set really is, and then Workday expanding their offering to a more complete HCM suite as well. So it is definitely has come to fruition.
All right, so we get 4 for 4. That crystal ball's been working well so far. So, so this next prediction is around innovation. HCM vendors will increase their investment in social communication and collaboration capabilities. And we'll stick with John starting this one. So, John, thoughts on that one?
We've seen that, again, continuing throughout the year. The social and communication aspects of it were pretty much in place for most of the year, but we have seen some vendors that have added some apps and some enhancements to it. I think where we're seeing some of the growth areas of the collaboration as their clients are asking not just for the social aspect of it, but also the ability to have people work through the system as a singular entity. We're seeing the vendors adding that functionality to their systems.
Jacqueline, anything to add to that one?
I think I agree with what John is saying, and what's interestingly enough, however, though, is I don't think, while the vendors have done a great job, I'm not sure that the HR and business community is ready to adopt all these wonderful social and collaboration tools that the vendors have introduced.
I would agree with you completely there, Jacqueline. I think it's a big buzzword, but I'm not sure everyone knows exactly what to do with this animal yet.
Yeah, it's still more hype than reality, which leads me into the next one, which was mobile enablement of HCM processes has become the next frontier of marketing and end-user adoption. I think that might be a little less myth than the previous social one, but Jacqueline, thoughts on that one?
Absolutely, and particularly in processes around recruiting and talent acquisition and self-service and manager approvals. Those are probably the two process areas where mobile has taken off, faster than everywhere else. Mainly because of the ease of what you're trying to do, and especially the manager approval. Everybody has a iPhone and Android or some similar type of device attached to them, and being able to approve something very quickly has definitely taken off.
And John, anything to add to that?
Not really. I think, again, this is an area where the companies are trying to figure out how to deal with mobile. There still is some concerns about security and pushing over, really confidential data through the mobile apps. And I think as the year progresses, the next year progresses, and I think as people get their arms around maybe creating policies and procedures about what to put through, I think we'll see an increase in the use of mobile.
Yeah, and I think it somewhat mirrors what we're seeing just in the mobile marketplace in general, forgetting HCM, just seeing tremendous innovation, competition between smartphones and tablets and everything else that it's everywhere, so it can't be ignored. So excellent. So we've got 5 more to go, and we're past the halfway point, and we are batting 1,000 here. So this is awesome. Number 7, organizations will continue to try to rationalize their application portfolio by implementing HCM suites that include ITM, or Integrated Talent Management. So, Jacqueline, are we seeing that?
Oh, yeah, we hit this one out of the park. It is in every single RFP, every single implementation consideration. People are looking for one solution provider. It is becoming prevalent that in the ITM market, that even the ITM vendors are finding that they have to start building out more HCM capabilities because people are looking for this, 100%.
Great. And John, anything to add?
No, I would agree, and totally. I think this is something that I see every time I'm doing an evaluation with a client is that the fewer the vendors that they have to deal with, the better. And if they can find everything or near on everything in one vendor, they'll sometimes change some of the ways that they need to do things or the features that they thought they needed to have just to have the one vendor.
Excellent. So the next prediction, and this is another one of those things that we're seeing a tremendous amount of, which is that SaaS has become the preferred method of or for HCM deployments. So, John?
I think that necessarily is true. I'm not sure if it's the preferred method, but it's becoming the only method that most people have and options to go to. So I think they're adopting it. I still see some in some pockets of industry some resistance and concerns about SaaS still and the security uptime, but mostly it's about the security and of their sensitive data. But I do think that SaaS is here to stay, and it's going to continue to grow. And most of the vendors, with the exception of a few, they're only offering anymore. So if you decide you don't want to use SaaS, you've really limited your choice at this point.
Yeah, and I know it came up a lot at the HR Tech conference. The people were asking about it, and I know there are still some, a lot of clients just questioning, the value of it. Should they go to it, and this and that? So, Jacqueline, anything you want to add to John's comments?
No, right on. And I think the preferred method, SaaS is the preferred method for vendors, for the technology community to deliver. It's not necessarily, like John said, the preferred method for IT departments who are trying to rationalize their new role in the SaaS world.
Perfect. All right, so we are 8 for 8. We have 3 to go. There are high fives going on all around the office already. So let's go the next one, the linkage between performance, succession, career development, and learning is increasing in importance for integrated talent management. So, Jacqueline, start on that one.
Yes, absolutely. We hit this one. We got this right. And in fact, what we are seeing this past year in every vendor demo and every vendor announcement is more integration, better integration. I think at this point in time, a vendor and or a consumer is not going to consider an ITM unless all of these are intrinsically linked and or to the point of sharing common databases.
And John?
I would agree. I think the clients of the vendors are looking for all these items to be linked together and in the system. Of all of them, I think the succession one we're seeing the slowest amount of deployment because people just can't get their arms around succession. I think they find it a little bit unnerving to, put together a list of people to replace someone. And also there's a lot of effort that goes on into succession. And so when we do see it being implemented, it's usually more for their senior or top management that we're seeing it being done right now and not really going down to more into the middle or lower management levels or even in the rank and file. But I think we're going to see this continue on within 2013.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we are still seeing some standalone learning projects, but I think it's becoming less over time. I thought it would have become less by now, but it's still happening. So let's go to the next one, number 10. Talent profile data, including competencies, has become the centerpiece of integrated talent management. So, Jacqueline, is that one true?
Absolutely, it's true. Your top tier vendors have even architected their solutions with the talent profile at the center. What's really interesting is I think this notion of talent profile has come from being a buzzword that people were using to, talk about a centralized database or repository to actually now something that people are looking at as a feature or a function, and if the talent profile isn't robust enough to be able to include all the information they want and maybe tailored for a certain type of employee, it's actually being considered a piece in the vendor evaluation. So it's not just the centerpiece, it's actually now a key component in ITM and in ITM evaluations.
All right. And John, anything to add to that?
I would agree with what Jacqueline said, and again, I'll focus back on the global market since I work with that so much, and we are, again, seeing people want to know the skill sets and everything people can do in the entire talent profile of an employee so they know how to best use their staff. As staffing, not even just in HR, but all over, is getting a little tighter and a little leaner, and people are looking at their hiring practices and who they're hiring. They really are wanting to look more to their internal staff that they have to keep that staff and utilize them to 100% more than they have been in the past.
Yeah, and the talent profile data is just becoming so critical. As the workforce continues to change, which I know we'll get into here in a little bit. But let's go into the last one and see if we keep a perfect 100% score here. So the last prediction that we made for 2012 was that the quality of vendor service and support remained the key to long-term customer satisfaction. So, John, do we have a perfect score?
We have a perfect score. This is becoming, I think, more and more of an issue with the clients and the vendors itself. I think they are looking, as they're moving more into the SaaS market, as they have to move more in the SaaS market. They are looking at these systems as being a little bit less permanent and more temporary, so that if they have a 3-year or a 4 or 5-year contract, they know at that point that contract expires or is close to. If they're unhappy with this vendor, they'll just dump them and move to another vendor. And we are getting some projects just recently where that one of the main reasons why they want to move off their current product is the service or the lack of service that they're getting. So I think it's going to be important for the vendors going into 2013 to look at the services that they're providing and the support that they're providing and make sure that organization is really top-notch.
Excellent. And Jacqueline, anything to add to that?
The only thing to add is because the way we're purchasing software now is it is a service. It's an expense on the books. It's a service like, contracting with us. And when you're purchasing services, you expect a certain level from your vendor, and if you don't get it, you will walk away, and your investment is less, so it's not like you're throwing away millions of dollars of capital that you invested because you haven't. So vendors that realize this, that focus on their service, are the ones that we will see in the future rise to the top, regardless of their feature function set.
Yeah, because I think, over time, sometimes it is difficult to tell products apart from a feature standpoint, but service in anything, whether it's software and places you go to eat or anything, always make the difference. So yay, team HRtech for going 11-11 on those predictions, 11 for 11. So 11 for 11 in 12, something like that. So anyway. So let's shift gears a little bit, and obviously the economic conditions that we're seeing today, it's debatable as to whether the economy is getting better, getting worse, staying the same, whether we're headed towards a recession, headed out of a recession, where employment's going, are people hiring, the so-called fiscal cliff, and so there's all these worries, concerns, also opportunities, depending on how you look at it. And that, of course, affects our marketplace, the human capital management marketplace, because decisions happen or don't happen sometimes based on conditions. So let's talk about that a little bit. And
Yeah, we keep hearing about, the workforce and, how it's changing. And, of course, the industry has its take and vendors have their take as well. And so to ask this of our panel is, what's changing the workforce? What's driving the change?
So I will take this first.
Go ahead.
And in what I'm seeing, what's changing the workforce is the mobility of the workforce, and the rapid change within organizations. Organizations now change strategy, change tactics, acquire and divest much faster than they were able to in the past. You can work anywhere. With technology, you can work anywhere in the world and be tied to a company. And because of that, ways of working have changed. And when ways of working change, the workforce changes. I read an article in the Drake University magazine about the change in leadership and how 20 years ago a leader was a manager who micromanaged everything to get it done, and today a leader is a person who enables others to get work done for the collective benefit of the company. And I think that was a really interesting way to look at the changing workforce.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Jacqueline. I think we're seeing the workforce changing. I think as we're seeing the baby boomers starting to exit the market and more focus being put on the millennials as they're coming in, there's a different expectation from an organization anymore, and people are looking to say, yeah, I don't mind coming to the office maybe, once or twice a week, but I don't want to be in there every day. I don't need to be in there. I can do my work from home, or I can do it from a remote location. I think we're seeing that actually even with our clients as we're doing projects. A lot more is being done remotely rather than this face-to-face sort of need. So I think there has been a dramatic change and shift in the workforce, and I'd even say in the older workforce they are kind of signing on to this idea that they don't need to be there, that their fulfillment out of their job doesn't come from coming in the office and hanging out at the coffee pot or the water cooler.
Excellent, very good. And as we think about the workforce and changing, I'll notice here that there are HR technology buying habits that are changing. And John, why don't we start with you? Is why are these HR technology buying habits changing, and what's driving that change?
I think it's being driven really by budgets. And it's not that budgets are any tighter or difficult to get. We're seeing, particularly in the latter part of 2012, that there's been a lot of activity of people looking at new systems, whether it's a full, system or just a specific niche vendor. But the companies are looking for a lot more ROI to be done. They are looking, and maybe it's because of the SaaS aspect and the factor that this product that you're buying is no longer capitalized and it's moving over to the regular budget because it's a month-by-month payment. But I think we're finding the companies are willing to release the money, but they want more justification and better justification on how the product is going to return something to the organization. And I think organizations are now beginning to realize that their people cost is very, very large within their company, and they don't have the tools and expertise of which to track and quantify some of the skills and people costs that they would like to keep a cap on.
Jacqueline, anything to add to that?
I think one other thing that's impacting buying habits is we now have a more educated consumer. Gone are the days where people are going from paper to a system. Now we typically see someone going from one system to another, so they know what they don't want. And with technology everywhere and everybody on Facebook and Amazon search and Google search, people kind of understand what they want and how they want to interact in a system, and so they are a more educated consumer, and that is changing their buying habits. They're no longer settling necessarily for what they have today or what one particular vendor is, where their current vendor is going. They're like, hey, I don't have to settle for this. I know there's better things out there.
All right, let's move on to a different topic, one that we touched on earlier, and let's talk about SaaS and obviously SaaS ITM products. We talked about in our predictions how it's become the preferred method, but John said, it might be the preferred, but it's not always happening that way. And so really some questions. And Jacqueline, I'll look to you first. Do people really even know what SaaS is?
No.
Yeah, that's kind of a yes or no question, I guess.
Okay, I will expand. They have an idea of what SaaS is. They understand it's something over the web and it's new and it looks better. What they don't understand is what is different about being a user and a consumer of SaaS versus purchasing regular software. There are things like they don't understand what their role is in maintaining a system. What is IT's role? How do I interact with a software vendor who is now my IT partner? I think those are the unknowns, and that's what people are wrestling with in the SaaS world, because they like, in general, they like the idea that they're no longer having to implement and purchase hardware, et cetera, but they also now don't know, well, gee, how do I manage this, and what is that relationship between me and my vendor now?
And so let's John, I'll get to you in a second, but talking about, let's stay with SaaS. So really this is a two-part question, and I'll go to John first. What are the features and benefits that people can expect from SaaS, and obviously general terms, and what might be the pitfalls of somebody using a SaaS solution?
Oh, that's interesting. The features and benefits actually is the fact that ultimately the system is actually up more than it is with an in-house system, and you have to look at the numbers, but within a SaaS provider, they always have a redundant system running. There is some downtime, but usually the vendors are willing to give you 99% uptime, which doesn't happen with an in-house system, particularly if you have a problem with that in-house system. I would totally agree with Jacqueline that in what she said about people not understanding SaaS, and that leads us into one of the pitfalls is that you still have to manage this system, and I'm finding with clients they think that they can just say, oh, we've signed up for SaaS, and the vendor's taking care of everything, and we don't need to monitor or look at the things. But you do have to make sure you understand what's happening in the releases and how the releases are applied. With some SaaS vendors, they put you on the next release when you want to, and there's a drop dead date that you all have to be on the next release. With some other SaaS vendors, everyone goes on that same release at the same time, and if you don't keep track of what's being added to the system, there could be features and functionality you're sitting there waiting for the vendor to add, and they've been added months ago. So you do have to monitor and handle the vendors just like you would with any outsourcer a little bit more, and people aren't quite understanding that they still have to watch the SaaS vendor and make sure they're getting the services, the system that they were expecting, and everything, and they just can't say, okay, as we've signed up for SaaS, it's their responsibility, and wash their hands of it, the responsibility.
So, Jacqueline, add on anything to John's comments, please.
Yeah, I agree with all of them, and I think one of the other benefits of SaaS that people tend not to realize is the ability to rapidly take delivery of new features and functions that in the past took years. and so they can actually get more ROI for their dollar by taking some of these upgrade features that maybe in the past, in the old on-premise model, took a number of years. So if people really understood what they had, I think they would be able to get an even better ROI. The other pitfall really has to do with the relationship, the vendor management, and the relationships between vendors and customers. I still think that even the vendors themselves haven't quite figured out how that relationship needs to be built. They're not selling them software and letting them go off on their own. That model, the sales model has changed, but I really think the support model hasn't changed, and I think that both vendors and customers haven't figured out really how to have a service relationship around software.
All right, so let's move into the market landscape. If you look at our report that we put out a year ago, there was a tremendous amount of acquisition activity, a tremendous amount of funding activity that took place, and as we always tell people, that's part of the reason why you should be hiring a consultant to help you navigate the waters when looking for a new system. And our decision drivers document is a small piece of that because vendor viability is a big factor in looking for solutions. So, given all that, as we talked about in one of our predictions, the pace did slow down in 2012, but I know some major acquisitions took place.
Yeah, 2012 did prove to be the year of large-scale acquisitions that Oracle acquired Taleo, IBM acquired Connexa, Ceridian then acquired Dayforce, and SAP, of course, acquired SuccessFactors back toward the beginning of the year. But, with all of that being said and thought about is, what does the HR marketplace look like now, and what does it mean? And Jacqueline, why don't we start with you on that one?
So what it actually, the difference between the marketplace now and maybe the marketplace at the beginning of the year is the direction the big guys, meaning Oracle and SAP, have taken with their products. And they have stepped up to the plate to compete in the SaaS world. Oracle with Fusion and with Taleo, SAP with SuccessFactors have kind of put their money now where their mouth has been in really competing in that SaaS world. Ceridian with Dayforce has now, taken a direction of trying to be, more of an HCM product rather than a payroll product, competing head-to-head with ADP and all the acquisitions they had done in 2010 and 2011. And IBM's Connexa acquisition is very interesting in that, Connexa was one of the lone ITM products that necessarily weren't a full suite ITM, but really heavy on recruitment and assessment. And now under the IBM umbrella, it sort of begs the question, while there are a lot of other products out there that haven't been acquired, SumTotal is really managed by a venture capital firm. You have Cornerstone is independent and Silk Road, and they're all great products. Who is left with the money to buy them, however? And I think that's my really interesting question for 2013. I would expect that there's some venture capital firms out there and maybe other service firms out there that may have the money, but it's going to take a lot of cash and a lot of capital to acquire some of these other big players that are very successful. And my question I'm kind of tossing around in my head is, who would that be? Who would have that kind of capital that could, take on a SumTotal or a Cornerstone or something of that sort?
Yeah, and that's a really good question because, and I'm guessing it's going to be somebody outside the marketplace, just like we saw IBM, come in and acquire Connexa. There's all these rumblings about Salesforce.com wanting to get into the HCM marketplace in a big way. And Jacqueline, you mentioned some of those vendors. We keep hearing things, companies like Ultimate Software, could also be an entry for somebody from the outside coming into our marketplace. What do you guys have as far as thoughts on something like that, like a Salesforce or somebody else we're not even thinking about?
I think we're going to see people that we're always on the peripheral of the HR market wanting to jump into it. The other thing that could actually happen with some of these vendors is that the larger organizations decide to buy up a competing vendor to essentially take them out of the market and push them into a singular product. Although we haven't seen that really happen, even with Oracle when they bought PeopleSoft, that PeopleSoft engine is still there and running. So that may not be the best approach. I think it's interesting as we look at all of this that a few years ago all the analysts were saying the ITM market was going to continue to expand and probably put away the old legacy vendor systems, and now we've seen kind of a flip of that, and the Oracles and Ceridians and SAPs jumping into the market by buying up the ITM vendors. So I think it's going to be an interesting year to watch and see what happens to the system. I do think we're going to see, particularly like with SAP and SuccessFactors, a moving over or the porting of SAP, which historically has a very high price tag to implement and keep running, and use that SaaS functionality and that SaaS methodology and mentality that SuccessFactors has to create a whole new system that's quicker, faster, smarter to implement and cheaper to implement. I'd also look at these vendors to maybe look at acquiring another product line because they may be still being viewed as being large corporate product developers and implementers. And I think the small business, the SMB market, is growing with leaps and bounds, and they may not be looking at their traditional Oracle or SAP product, but may look at another one maybe with a different name or an add-on name that they feel is within their price range.
Excellent. Jacqueline, anything else to add to that topic?
I guess the only other thing is when you think about who's left, you have definitely primarily SaaS vendors left on the ITM side, but you also have some sort of legacy on the HCM side. Epicor is somewhat a legacy product of the old Spectrum. Ultimate can, in some cases, depending on the release, be considered legacy. And I'm not sure that they would be as big of an acquisition target as someone like a Silk Road, who is new technology, new cool platform, and really fits into that new trend of SaaS delivery. So yeah, a Salesforce and a Silk Road, to me, that would be an interesting match. They have very similar approaches to implementation and development of software. I think that Salesforce would, if they acquire anyone, it would definitely, though, be a pure SaaS product, nothing with any legacy kind of backbone that they would have to worry about supporting.
Great. It's going to be interesting to watch. So let me go into one topic that's somewhat off of HR technology per se before we go into kind of wrapping up all the technology activity and what people should expect. And it's really about the workforce in general. I mean, we're seeing a lot of changes, a lot of the composition of the workforce change, and you've got younger people coming in, and they expect different things than other generations. They need to be managed differently. And then that changes depending on whether you're here in the United States or you're in some other location across the world. And that poses a lot of challenges for organizations, especially as organizations continue to go global, not just your large organizations, but smaller to mid-sized organizations as well. So given all that as kind of a lead-in, what are some examples of, I guess, strategic HR management initiatives that organizations are striving for? And I'll ask this of both John and Jacqueline, because I know you work with so many different types of organizations. And, really, I think everybody ultimately has the same goal of how to better manage people, how to, find the right talent, keep the right talent, and all that. So talk to us a little bit, and Jacqueline, I'll start with you. Talk to us a little bit about some of those strategic HR management initiatives that companies are striving for today that may have been different a couple of years ago.
I'm not sure if it's different than a couple of years ago as opposed to being more critical than a couple of years ago. The key clients I am working with now are trying to balance their aging knowledge workforce with the new millennials. I have two clients whose leadership and key knowledge workers are within 8 years or less to retirement age, and they do not have a pool of folks to replace them within that same year. And they are struggling, and this is both domestic and globally, and they're struggling with what do we do? Do we buy the workforce? Do we develop our workforce? And how do we bridge that gap? And I think that's certainly always been top of mind in HR, but it really is becoming more urgent because the workforce that's aging is much larger than the workforce coming in. And then the sort of tag on to that is, even though the economy has not been the best economy in the past couple of years, the younger generation is certainly willing to move employer to employer, get 10% more money here, 5% more money there, a better work-life balance here, and they won't stay in a job for 5, 6, 7 years. So with workforce looking to retire in 8 years or less, knowing that there's a generation of worker who isn't necessarily willing to make a commitment to a company for the long term, how do we really shore up our talent and make sure we have the right folks in place, 5, 6, 7, 8 years from now?
And John, what thoughts do you have around that?
I would agree with everything what Jacqueline would say, and I think we also are seeing a growth in the non-U.S. population of employees. When you look at most companies, they're looking at the European market as being as flat because they're in a recession also there. So a lot of my clients are saying their growth areas are actually, Africa, Latin America, and Asia, which are completely different challenges, and particularly in using technology and using people. And I think organizations are trying to look at not only the retention, but how we just deploy people better and how we use their skills and knowledge better across multiple continents. Had one client whose key goal out of getting a new system would be able to move people around all over between Australia and maybe Brazil because they have a specific skill set that they need in a specific location. So I think we are going to see the globalization of particularly the small and medium-sized businesses, and I think we need to be prepared that it's going to create a lot of challenges, particularly the smaller organizations, because there are not just the technology wants and needs, but there's the different cultural uses of systems and what they're expecting the system to do or not do. And that's going to be really a big challenge for organizations that have been traditional U.S.-based employers.
Yeah, it's certainly a challenge, and it does create sometimes management gaps, if you will, for a lot of these organizations that have not had to face this before, but the reality is certainly there. So great. So lots of good, interesting discussions today, and we have a few minutes left, so I thought we'd kind of just try to wrap up what we've talked about so far, and really what's next.
Yeah, so with all of the happenings of 2012 and the activity that happened in the marketplace, John, let's start with you this time. What does this mean for our clients?
Oh, for our clients, I think they're going to still be challenged as they're doing evaluations. They're going to need to understand what's happening with the vendors, where the movement and what actually their competition is doing. I think it's again, with the growth that I think we're going to see in the global market, they need to get their arms around what that means and just get their arms around SaaS and the cloud, because they just truly don't understand how to deal with these organizations. But I think it still means that the evaluation and the care and feeding of a system is still going to be top on the people's list, and they are going to need help in understanding this industry, particularly what to do when your vendor gets acquired. And is it time to panic? Do you bolt? Do you wait? There's going to be all sorts of questions they have as we see this industry continue to unfold in 2013.
Very good. And Jacqueline?
I agree, and they're going to need us more than ever. And that's not just an advertisement. It's not their job. I think that's the other thing that I think our clients are beginning to realize. It's not their job to keep up with the marketplace and understand what vendor does what and who's who in the zoo, as I would say. And that is our job. And I think that you need to understand that, and you need to understand where you are as an organization, what you're willing to spend, what kind of change you're willing to embark on, and what disruption that might mean to your business. And I think as our clients struggle with that, we can help them. And I think that's probably what I think people should be looking to do in 2013 is they should be looking to really look at those strategies and look at where they're at and where they need to go and make sure they understand what their core needs are of the business. So as we start unraveling the merger acquisition, SaaS versus no SaaS world, they actually have a core strategy that they can execute regardless of how that all unfolds.
Very good. So if we look ahead to 2013 and what, making some predictions, and I know we've discussed some of this ahead of time as to what we think we're going to see in 2013. So I want to throw this first one out there and get some quick discussion from Jacqueline and then John. We believe that it might be a flat year in development and net new sales, it's going to be not so much revolutionary but evolutionary. And so, Jacqueline, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think that the revolutionary but not evolutionary is really going to be the key. For people who are looking for that, wow, what's the next new big thing, I don't think that's going to come next year. I think what's going to happen are vendors are going to shore up what they already have, make the integration better, make what they have work smarter, embed a little more social collaboration, make sure mobile is more stable. So I think it's going to do the next natural evolution of introducing all of these things. I also think that a lot of development, at this point with, fiscal cliff or no fiscal cliff, I think the development budgets across the vendor community are going to be conservative. And while I see them developing out features and functions, I really don't see this as being a big year in, oh my gosh, I can't believe that vendor XYZ did this.
John, anything to add to that?
No, I would agree. I don't think we're going to see anything revolutionary in any of the systems this year. I think, as Jacqueline said about the economy, and I think people have realized that the economy just is no longer, the U.S. is a standalone. But when you see that the debt crisis in Greece affect the stock market prices, you realize that something you have no control over can stop your industry and your business. So I do think people are going to continue to look at systems. I don't think they're going to be looking for anything super colossal. I think they're going to be very price conscious moving forward, and particularly on the implementation side conscious. I think that it's going to be a tougher year for sale. I think the sales cycles are going to get much longer, so that instead of seeing someone who wants to get a selection, a system selected within 1 or 2 months, I think we're going to see that into the 5-6 month period. I think there's going to be a lot more due diligence that's going to happen, and because of that, I don't think the vendors are going to be. They're going to have to put more money into the sales aspect rather than into the development aspect.
Excellent. So another prediction is a reassessment of those that have legacy systems, which are a ton of companies out there, due probably in large part to Fusion finally becoming available. So, Jacqueline, thoughts about that?
Yes. With PeopleSoft having dominated the HR marketplace back in the 90s, and a large percentage of firms still running that PeopleSoft system, Lawson systems as well, that are now becoming very old, and they're facing either obsolescence or some major upgrade maintenance. Fusion has now come on as a viable alternative. It works, it's there, it's being implemented. It's no longer an idea or vaporware, and I think that people that have those legacy client-server systems, that need a large, complex solution, are now going to kind of take a look and say, hey, well, do we do anything with this, or do we just plan our move? Where do we start investing our dollars and start really looking at their investments in that light?
Excellent. And I'm going to move on to the next one, only in the interest of time. The focus around data, and you keep hearing the words big data. I think that's going to be something huge in 2013. And I'd like to have both Jacqueline and John just chime in real quick on this one. Jacqueline, you go first. HR has been operating systems now for 20-plus years. There's a lot of data out there. It's in multiple places. We're still trying to wrestle with how we pull it all together and come up with meaningful information to make business decisions, and I think that's going to be a huge focus this year. John?
I would agree totally. I think this is the year for us to really kind of lunge forward to say we can help run this organization and run this company. We can help control and tell you how you're spending your employee dollars better, and so you can make better decisions. So I think we are going to see a lot better use of the data that we have.
Excellent. We kind of talked about this next one here in some of our answers, but the global marketplace and the SMB market becoming more global. John, anything to add to that one real quick?
No, I've kind of talked a lot about that. I think we are going to see a growth in, particularly in the SMB going into global. I think one of the challenges is going to be getting more vendors that can become truly global and not just take a global mailing address or something, but actually can handle multiple languages, multiple character sets, and also multiple currencies, and do its analysis in both currencies, both in the currency of the organization and the local currency. So I think it is going to be a real growth area that hasn't gotten a lot of exposure or attention from the vendor community.
Good point. We talked about this one already, so won't add any further comment, but few and niche ITM vendors will probably exist in 2013 and beyond. But one other one that I'd like, Jacqueline, for you to comment on real quick is that we believe we'll see a clear strategy from SAP SuccessFactors.
Yes, I really believe that we will be very shortly hearing that SAP is going to move forward with SuccessFactors as their preferred HCM product, and if not, retire but no longer really maintain their legacy. They have such a foothold in the ITM space with SuccessFactors clients, and the build out of the core HR functionality. I think SAP is going to very soon next year basically roll out SuccessFactors as the HR product that SAP offers.
Excellent. Well, fantastic insight from everybody. Really appreciate Tiffany, Jacqueline, and John and all your time today. And just want to wish everybody out there happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and a wonderful and prosperous New Year. So thank you, everybody, for listening. And I guess at this point we'll talk to you sometime next year. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.